we should not let these fringe groups, and I don't think these are all spontaneous. I do think activists are coming in
Yeah, I'm sure.
and ginning this up. I don't think that should be happening. I mean, look, this isn't good for America. I mean, what are we, dummies? They're hoping that they will burn this city to the ground. They're hoping they will sow discord. This isn't pro-America. We've got people that are pushing this that hope that this deteriorates the city and tears it down. That's not pro-America. We need to wake up and smell the coffee here.
To clarify, the particular raids that happened on June 6th were actually not immigration enforcement actions. It was about busting cartels, but they happened to find some illegal immigrants and they arrested them. That said, this brings me back to the bigger point, though, which is we've created an environment where stuff like this is going to happen. The more that we keep on pounding the table about violent criminals and rapists and drug dealers and honestly demonizing the entire illegal immigrant population, the more that people are going to react when they see ICE suit up in LA. So I think we need to just take down the rhetoric, have a plan that's more focused on incentives rather than force, and then we don't even have to be in situations where the president needs to deploy the National Guard.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Okay, got a Piers Morgan debate, but it's a little bit different than the usual, if you will. We got Dr. Phil coming in. He interviews Dr. Phil, which we're going to respond to that a little bit, which, in case you didn't know, Dr. Phil was embedded with the ICE agents that raided a company over in California that kicked off these riots that we've been having, riots and protests, to be fair. There is protests, and it's overwhelmingly peaceful, but then you do have this riotous section of protests that is reprehensible, if you will. I don't like riots at all, but anyway, so he was embedded with the ICE agents that kicked all this off. But then we get into the debate. We got Kaizen coming in. We got two California gubernatorial candidates. This is going to get pretty good. But before we jump into that, y'all do me a big favor. Smash that like button for me. I would really appreciate that. Also, subscribe to this channel. Check out my regular videos. We go over politics. We cover the manipulations of the corporate press. We inform you as to news that you're not going to hear about on the corporate news. You're not going to hear about on the mainstream. And that you're not going to hear about from all these other giant YouTube channels. So I try to bring something to the table that everybody can at least gain something from this channel here. So y'all make sure and tune into those. Share this video anywhere and everywhere that you can. That would be great. I would be greatly appreciative. Also, if you could look right below the video and click that join button, sign up, become a member, help me deliver the best possible content I can deliver to you guys, because y'all deserve the best possible content. So without any further ado, let's get into it, y'all.
There are estimates that the number of illegal immigrants in the United States, a country, of course, founded on immigration, there could be as many as 30, 50, maybe 80 million people in the country illegally. No one's really quite sure, but it's tens of millions, whichever figure you want to buy into. Would you be happy, Phil, given that a lot of those people have settled in the United States for many years, had kids maybe in the United States, got a job, paid taxes, contributed to society, maybe doing a lot of menial work that is very important to keeping America running. Would you be happy if literally all of them were deported as a matter of principle?
I think we would be in a serious crisis if everyone left this country. And I think we need to address that. I think we need to address that in the legislature. I mean, clearly, this is a country of immigrants, some legal, some illegal. And if we have dysfunctional immigration laws, then we need to call an immediate session of Congress, address this, and find a way to get visas for these people, work visas, whatever kind of visas, or get the immigration courts unstopped. They're stopped up right now. Get that blockage out of the way so you can actually process people. But the reason they're stopped up for 7, 8, 9 more years is because all the people that have filed for asylum when they didn't have a good case for asylum. And when they get there and it's denied in the vast majority of cases, then they're given an order to leave and they don't. So they overstay. but they clog the courts up so people that have legitimate reasons don't ever get a chance to have their day in court. I don't think our immigration laws are functional, but those are the laws right now, Pierce. And what do you do? How do you, these laws aren't optional. They're not suggestions. How do you decide that you're going to enforce it for this person, but not that
Well, I
person?
think that's the big question, isn't it? I mean, that's why I think, funny enough, if Donald Trump, through his team, including Tom Homan, I think it's a very impressive operator, actually, but if they had made it clear that the first raft of deportations were going to be exclusively restricted to people who were in the country illegally who had committed crimes, I think they would have had universal support from everybody. I think it's the fact that so many are being deported at such a rate that inevitably certain people are falling through the cracks here who have not committed any crimes, who may have built a life for themselves in the US, living the American dream in many ways, right? Albeit coming in illegally. I think people feel more uncomfortable about people like that being deported than they would if they were actually people committing crimes.
Okay, so I want to address a couple of those talking points. Chief among them is that we're a country of immigrants. That is a lie. I can't stand that talking point. We have never been a country of immigrants. This country was founded on colonization. Take that for whatever it is, good or bad, right? Sure, there is bad about it, but there's a lot of good about it. But overwhelmingly, throughout this country's history, the vast majority of people in this country have been Native Americans, and I mean that in the literal sense, not the politically correct sense. So we're not a country of immigrants. We've always had immigration, we've always had high rates of immigration, but that doesn't mean we're a country of immigrants. We were colonizers at first, then we were pioneers that just went off out into the wilderness, which is another form of colonization. So the vast majority of this country's history has been colonization, for goodness sakes, and the immigration only really ramped up in the 1800s, 1900s, up until today, right? And it's got its ebbs and flows. It goes up and down and blah, 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 blah. But, you know, this is an argument you could take. We're not a country of immigrants. We allow a massive amount of immigrants, but we're not a country of immigrants, once again. And then this point that, oh, the immigration system is broken and blah, blah, blah. I can't stand that, by the way. It's not. It was designed in such a way that we only allow X amount of people to come in at a time so we do not overwhelm the resources of, you know, local localities, these municipalities that maybe they can't handle that many, maybe they can, but it's set up like that intentionally, right? This is why we have visas as well, to allow people to come in to work, to allow them to do their thing. They get resources from outside the country because maybe they live somewhere else, maybe they're living here temporarily, blah, 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 blah. You get it, but it's set up like this on purpose. It is not broken, sure. Do we need to expand it a little bit? Yes. The Big Beautiful Bill does this. A lot of people are hating the Big Beautiful Bill. I've got my criticisms on that. But the Big Beautiful Bill does expand immigration. The judges, it expands everything about immigration, as a matter of fact, to the tune of billions of dollars, tens of billions of dollars. So, you know, they are expanding this. That pretty much fixes this whole narrative that Democrats have. Well, we tried to have this bipartisan legislation and Donald Trump said no. That's nonsense. It's all nonsense, right? That was, oh, we need to secure the border because we need legislation. That was Joe Biden. Well, Donald Trump just smashed that right out when he came in office. You know, border crossings are down 95, 96% or something like that. It's insane. Let's keep going.
Let me tell you what's happened here. Because I've been fairly close to this, as you know, and they had three primary objectives. One was to close the border, and I think that's been effectively done.
Yes.
I mean, the illegal crossings
amazingly successful, yeah. And Trump isn't getting nearly enough credit for that.
And number two was the worst first. Let's get the violent criminals out of here. The TDA, you know, Trinidad, let's get them out of here. MS-13, let's get the gang members, those that are. And typically, they start out by victimizing their countrymen. That's where they go first because they've got the bluff in on them. And so they start victimizing their own countrymen. And then third is find the missing children. There are a minimum of 300,000 missing children. Now, some of them have found their way to family and they're safe, but an unsettling number are being sex trafficked or they're into forced labor, and they need to be found, helped, given services, medical, psychological, sociological, and reunited with their families. So those are the three prime directives. But here's what's happening. In sanctuary cities where they refuse to cooperate with ICE, where one agent can go in and arrest one detainee that's in jail, they instead have to do a complete operation to arrest this person on the streets. And when they go in, say, to an apartment where maybe there are 8 or 10 people living, they're going to check who they're with. And if those people are simply here illegally but haven't committed a crime, they're not going to say, oh, well, we'll overlook that. You're here illegally. By law, they have to detain them and take them in for deportation. They're creating that which they fear the most. They're forcing the agents into the community to deal with people that maybe aren't violent criminals. So they're creating that which they fear the most. And look, the mainstream media is not reporting the facts. What happened in LA and what happens in most of these situations are interagency situations. In LA, this was a multi-agency situation. There was a search warrant issued by a federal judge against a company that is alleged to have undervalued imports, some counterfeit, by $80 million. They had underpaid their tariffs by an estimated $17 million. Half of their workforce were illegal immigrants. And so when they go in to serve this search warrant on this alleged criminal enterprise, these illegal aliens get caught up, these illegal immigrants get caught up in that sweep of this criminal enterprise. So they get arrested. Nobody's reporting the fact that this was a interagency operation. And now, not every agency was involved, but U.S. Marshals were there, FBI was there, ATF was there, ICE was there. There were all these different agencies there, and they weren't all involved with this particular search warrant, but a federal judge issued this search warrant after reviewing evidence that said there's probable cause. Why isn't anybody talking about that?
This is the part of the reason this channel exists right here, is to fill in the gaps that the corporate press, the information that you need to make an informed decision onto what is going on in reality to wherever you fall, right? Because we all need to be informed with all the information to make an informed decision about how we feel about certain situations, right? And the corporate press, they intentionally leave out pertinent information such as that, and then just try to tell you that, oh, Donald Trump just unprompted by anything sent the National Guard in to quell protests, for goodness sakes. They're trying to downplay these protests. Oh, they're not riots. Oh, well, hang on. The rioters, it's just localized to this one little tiny area right there in downtown Los Angeles, when that is not the case, right? But what they don't tell you is the reason for these raids and exactly what happened. Yeah, we were trying to bust a criminal cartel operation that was going on, and we just so happened to stumble upon loads of criminal aliens, which is insane to say the least, right? This needs to be done. We need to clean up the criminals in this country. We need to get back to law enforcement. People have gotten used to the Biden administration and their laxed policies with law enforcement and their laxed policies when it comes to criminals and criminal aliens at this point. So, right, that's part of the reason this channel exists, because the corporate press, they're always trying to lie. They're always trying to frame every single situation that you hear from them. I can guarantee you, any story, any news article, anything you get from left-wing news, corporate press news, anything like that, it's always, folks, always, remember this, Democrats are good. Republicans are evil. They're just evil. And you know, sometimes if we don't have to mention Democrats, we're not even going to mention Democrats, but Republicans. It's always their fault, and they're always evil, and Trump is the chief among those. He's always bad. He doesn't do anything good ever unless he's bombing Syria or something like that, which is ridiculous. But you know, they don't give you the information you need to be informed, and that's part of why this channel exists, folks. But let's get into the debate, because that's coming next. So check this out, y'all.
We'd all agree that violence is completely unacceptable, and we've seen a lot of that. You know, the Democrat attempts to try and play down the violent aspect of this, I think, is disgraceful. It's pretty obvious when you're seeing people torching cars, looting shops, throwing rocks at cars as they speed past, which could kill people. This has been a very violent series of events in Los Angeles. But let me ask you, Kaizen, about the bigger picture, I guess, behind all this, which is ICE, immigration, deportation, who should be deported, how fast they're doing it, and so on. Dr. Phil painted, like I say, a pretty detailed picture of why he believes the federal government is acting entirely not only within its rights, but also living up to the promises that Donald Trump made as a candidate, and one of the primary reasons he got elected. What is your view about the argument about what ICE is doing here?
Yeah, so look, Donald Trump got elected on the promise of resolving the illegal immigration situation. And right now he's trying to do it. Now, there are good ways to do it and there are bad ways to do it. And I think we can talk about what we want to do, but also how we want to do it. So there are 10 to 20 million people in the country illegally right now. That's a lot of people to deport by force. So the question is, how can we effectively deport this many people if we even agree that we should? And not the whole country agrees, but the president was elected to do that. My concern is not that they're deporting people. My concern is that we're over-relying on force. And when you use forceful action, you get a forceful reaction. And that's what we're seeing. And at the end of the day, all of these riots started over the deportation of 118 people. We have 10 to 20 million people. This doesn't scale. So what I'd actually like to see the president do is not stop deporting, because I think that's important to restore order in this country, but rather to change the incentive model to incentivize people to self-deport. Because what we're seeing right now is the forced approach is creating a lot of civil unrest, and a lot of people just feel confused as to what's going on. I think we can make this a lot more easeful by enforcing existing workplace law so that employers can't pay people under the table and employ illegal immigrants, incentivizing illegal immigrants to leave by actually paying them, because it's cost us $17,000 to deport an illegal immigrant by force. So surely we could pay them half of that amount for them to just leave voluntarily, and by locking down the border so that they can't come back in. And I would also like to see the president just tone down some of the rhetoric around illegal immigration, because during this campaign, a lot of the focus was on violent criminals. And of course, a percentage of the illegal population is violent criminals, but the vast majority aren't. I mean, I meet a lot of these people on a daily basis. They're just hardworking people who fled a desperate situation in Central and South America and came here wanting a better life. But they have to enter legally. So we need to remove them from the country, but we can do that humanely and while minimizing force.
Okay, I'm really surprised that Kaizen came with that argument, because he seems to be an informed guy, but that's what the Trump administration is doing. They turned the CBP One app into a self-deportation app, and they're offering people $1,000 when they land in their home country. They'll give you $1,000 to help you get started back in your home country, right? This is one of the most gracious things that the Trump administration can do. I mean, these people violated our laws to come into the country. They spit in our face. They spit in the face of everybody else who decided to wait in line to come into this country legally. Then they skip the line, basically. And then what does the Trump administration do when these people get caught? He gives them a freaking ride home. I mean, he doesn't have to do that. We could throw all these people in a jail cell, for goodness sakes, for 6 months and then deport them, but Donald Trump is not doing that. He's just giving them a ride home. And sometimes, like I said, it blows my mind. I thought he was a little bit more informed than that, yeah, the Trump administration is definitely incentivizing people to self-deport, for goodness sakes. It throws me off. But, this whole idea of not using force, so what do you do when the people don't want to leave and they just want to fly underneath the radar? What do you do at that point? We got to go after these people. And what the Trump administration is essentially doing is you go after the easiest people you can first, the criminals, right? Because essentially, for the most part, where these people are and what they're doing because they've been caught up in our criminal justice system, for crying out loud. So we go after those people. They're also going after the people with final orders of deportation. The vast majority of deportations have been people that had already final orders of deportation, like Kilmore Abrego Garcia. And then you get the left screaming, oh, due process. Well, he already had his due process. All of these people already had their due process. They are not rounding up a bunch of people that they don't know that they're in the country, right? Most of those that you do hear about, they stumble upon these people that just so happen to be in the country illegally and haven't been caught up in our criminal justice system. They just accidentally come across these people by simply enforcing the current laws that we have on the books. Kind of blew my mind when I saw that section, but let's keep going.
I mean, it seems to me, guys, and talking to Dr. Phil, I asked him this question, but I don't really speak to any Americans. I speak to a lot of Americans, but I haven't met any yet who have any objection in the principle of deporting illegal immigrants who've committed crimes, right? They're all just like, right, straight out the country. Everyone's agreed about that. So let's park. You don't think so?
No. I mean, I live in California, so I have a lot of liberal friends, and a lot of people are not on board with deportations. And I think this is
hang on. No, just to be clear, specifically deportation to people in the country illegally who then commit crimes in the United States.
Yes, I think people are on board about that.
Right. So,
actually, there's a lot of these crackpot leftists that just aren't. They don't want anybody deported at all. They could care less if they committed crimes or not. I'm just saying.
I think we should park that category of deportation targets to one side, because it seems to me everyone's pretty well agreed that in principle that is fine. It gets more complicated when you have, for argument's sake, someone who came in the country illegally 10 years ago, has now had family in the United States, has got a job in the United States, is paying taxes in the United States. What should happen to that person if they get caught up, for example, in an ICE raid in the neighborhood, and then it turns out they're there illegally? How do you feel about that person being deported?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and this is the thing that I think everyone was dancing around during the election. I think all people who are here illegally need to leave the country.
Right.
And I think we can do that compassionately. So I don't want to see a mom who's been here for 10 years being rounded up in an ICE raid on the street and suddenly having to go to Mexico 48 hours later. What I want is a system where people are given advance notice. We can give them like a year's notice and say, hey, look, you have a year to get your affairs in order. And although we understand that you're just a human being who wants to have a good life, the thing that makes America awesome is the fact that we follow the rules here. There are 7.6 million people in our immigration backlog who applied for green cards and tried to come here legally. It's not fair to them. It's not fair to us. We need to do things the right way. So we're going to pay you a resettlement fee so that you can go back to your country of origin with minimal disruption to your life. But you do need to go. And is that going to be expensive for American taxpayers? It is, but that's also the cost of restoring the perception of fairness and order in this country, which is something that we've lost, and I think why we're so divided. And if we don't figure out a way to resolve this, it's going to continue to be a political talking point every 4 years. And aren't we all tired of this?
Yeah, I agree with you.
You know, considering over the course of the Biden administration, we were spending anywhere from $150 to $400 billion a year to subsidize criminal aliens, essentially. I think that's not a bad idea. You know, give these people notice now. That is for a certain sect of people that are in the country illegally. Anybody that has been here for less than 2 years, or right at 2 years or less, they are subject to expedited removal, which means you don't get any due process. You just get detained and deported. I think that's fine. I'm totally fine with that. Now, anybody that's been here longer than that, I agree. Hey, maybe we could help to resettle these people back into the country instead of spending money giving these people debit cards with thousands of dollars on it and putting them up in hotel rooms, for crying out loud. We'll give them a little bit of cash and send them right on their way. Let them know. Once again, folks, you got to come in the legal way. We don't mind immigration. You go ask anybody in the country, right? I'm sure there's a small, extreme example of people that will say, no immigration at all. We need a moratorium, blah, 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 blah. Sure, we can ignore those people because the vast majority of Americans say, yes, immigration is good, the legal way, right? So, Hey, let's expand the immigration judges. Let's expand our visa program. Let's expand the green card program and all that stuff. Let's do all of these things. These are nice, right? We need more people with work visas, blah, 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 because currently we're going through a crisis. As a matter of fact, my next video I'm going to cover, we're going to be talking about this with the Trump administration ordering ICE to stop going to like agriculture, like farms, and picking up people, the leisure industry like hotels and restaurants, and stop getting these people because it's causing problems with the companies themselves. These businesses, they're hurting because of this. So Trump is stopping that. We're going to discuss that on my next video. But, you know, I agree with what he's basically saying here. It's a good idea, right? We want to do it humanely. And I think overwhelmingly the Trump administration is doing this humanely. The outlier incidents that you hear about from the corporate press is a lot of it's lies, for one. They're just twisting the facts around and blowing a small situation up that is just a standard deportation, like with Kilmar Abrego Garcia. Once again, you know, we call it the Maryland man hoax, because that's what the corporate press kept saying. Oh, Donald Trump mistakenly deported a Maryland father, for crying out loud. Well, no, for one, he wasn't mistakenly deported. There was an error in his deportation, but he had final orders of deportation. And I've gone over that at nauseum, for crying out loud. Like most of the longtime viewers of this channel know about that I debunked pretty much the entire corporate press narrative around that. All right, because yeah, he had final orders of deportation. He didn't get an interview. That was the mistake, right? I mean, how does the corporate press get to that point to where they say the guy didn't get an interview, therefore my headline should say Maryland father mistakenly deported to El Salvador? It's like, that doesn't make any sense. That doesn't logically line up. But once again, that's the reason this channel exists. But I mostly agree with what he's saying. But let's keep going.
Sheriff Bianco, this whole incident in LA has magnified what is going on with the Trump immigration policy. You know, I thought that Kaizen articulated it very well, what a potential way to resolve this is. What did you think of what he said? Do you have a better plan?
I think what he said is exactly spot on. I think that's the voice of reason. That's the voice of common sense. And what we're talking about here is completely riotous behavior that is being allowed and has honestly been enabled over the last 10, 20 years of this progressive rule that is anti-public safety. And this was being allowed to exceed what it should have been done over days because there was no action. You have the largest two law enforcement agencies in the country that were being overrun to where they had to call for help, for backup from the 4 surrounding counties, and we had to send reinforcements in. The beauty of having the federal government there, the National Guard and now Marines, they're not there yet, but they're going to be, is they are protecting those buildings. So now we can go out and stop this riotous behavior that's going on. The fact that you have politicians speaking out in their own political, trying to make this political for their own benefit, the rest of us are suffering for it. The law enforcement is suffering for it. The people that are here illegally or not, that are residents of our communities, we're the ones suffering for this, all while the politicians are sitting arguing and pointing fingers and pointing blame to say it's your fault, so go ahead and elect me or elect me again. And the reality is you have common sense approaches that this started because absolute criminals with deportation orders were going and being targeted, and then this escalated into what we're talking about now. This isn't about the 4-year-old that somehow got deported. This is about violating our laws. It is victimizing the rest of us, and the politicians are making this happen. I would be willing to bet that if Case and I sat down at a table with maybe a handful of other adults, we could solve the immigration process, because it's going to take compassion. It's going to take the rule and the order of law to make all of this happen. But it's going to take absolute adults that have nothing to do with politics in order to fix this, because every single politician is using this and has been using this for decades for their own benefit during election cycles.
All right, Stephen, I can see you remonstrating. We couldn't hear what you were saying, but I just want to respond to that.
Yeah, Sheriff, look, I sat with you. You're a good guy. You're a patriot. I get it. You would never, never send your officers into a situation where they would or could get hurt. And that's where I've got a serious problem here, because Tom just sent his folks in there without any coordination. He could have picked up the phone and called Governor Newsom and said, hey, look,
This is the problem with this, Piers. He has absolutely no idea what he's talking about. I know what this plan is. I know what the plan was. I know what they were doing. So did every other law enforcement leader. We have politicians or people wanting to be politicians that are making up things for their own personal benefit in their own head and their own opinions that are not fact. And that is where
Tom called Gavin Newsom and said, I'm coming in.
Gavin
Do you
Newsom
know that
has
for a fact?
nothing to
Do you
with
know
this.
that for a fact? Did Tom call you? Did Tom call you and say, hey, I'm coming into LA? Sheriff Bianco,
No.
I'm coming into LA. Did he do that?
His people did. That's the cooperation of law enforcement. And when people who have absolutely no idea what they're talking about decide to have opinions like the facts, we get into these positions. And talking over people while they're talking, answering you, and because you don't want to hear the answer, that's why.
No, I do want to hear the answer. You're diverting. You're diverting. Did Tom call you? Yes or no?
Tom shouldn't call me. The people that were operating called me.
What about it?
This is proof that you know nothing about what you're talking about, and this is politics destroying everything. You have no business managing this. The governor has no business managing this. People.
The governor certainly does when it comes to posse comitatus. It certainly does. Do you know what posse comitatus means, Sheriff?
I'm not sure you do, but Piers, come on.
I do.
We're talking about riots in LA, and we're talking about an issue that is being.
Well, my problem, I actually don't have as big a problem as some people seem to with the use of National Guard or even the use of Marines if it comes to it. If there is a general belief that the officials on the ground have lost control, okay, then the federal government needs to step in.
And see, this is a problem with a lot of leftists and a lot of these protesters. They're misinformed as hell. They just outright, they're misinformed. This guy's misinformed. Posse comitatus is not applicable in this situation right here because Donald Trump sent the National Guard in to protect the federal buildings, for crying out loud. He didn't send the National Guard in to quell the violence or the riots or anything like that. Right? They're letting local law enforcement do that job because that is their job. National Guard is protecting the federal agents and the federal buildings. That's their job. So we can get more officers to quell the riots, to deal with that situation. That's what Donald Trump did. But what did the corporate press do? Oh, they started lying immediately. Oh, Don, this is illegal. He didn't call Gavin Newsom, blah, 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 blah. Well, hang on. Under, what was it, Title 10, I believe. Yeah, they're not going in to quell the riots, for goodness sakes. They're going in to do the job that LAPD and the county sheriffs were doing to protect ICE agents, for goodness sakes. So that takes... it gives them relief, essentially, so they can go and handle these riots and deal with that situation. This is crazy. Once again, the corporate press is the main reason that we have so many deranged delusionists in this country, right? All these people that are violent and rioting, those are probably just anarchists, right? A lot of them are leftist anarchists that just want to see this country burnt to the ground. And a lot of times they take advantage of peaceful protests and do this, but still, regardless, those same people don't show up to right-wing protests, for goodness sake. So, what's going on with that? It's kind of one-sided there. We only see this, generally speaking, outside of January 6th, for goodness sakes, with left-wing violence, left-wing protests. But it's the corporate press lying to the American people that make these people think a reality that doesn't exist. They make people think that, oh, Donald Trump is an authoritarian, he's a fascist, he's blah, blah, blah. I mean, there's the No Kings rally going on today all over the damn country. And for what? That's a ridiculous name right there. It's a misnomer, for one, because Donald Trump is not a king. He's not a fascist. He's not an authoritarian. He's none of those things. But the corporate press has led these people down the path of destruction, and now they are destroying themselves. They're destroying Democrats. They're destroying left-wing ideologies just in general. right, with all this delusional nonsense. I find it hilarious that none of these people seem to want to be informed. They think that they're informed by watching corporate press news outlets, but the corporate press is lying to them, leaving out facts, not giving them all of the information that they would need to make an informed decision. And it's just insane, and that's the divisions we have in this country, and I blame 99% of that on the corporate news in this country. They have just lied their way into dividing this country so heavily. We're so polarized right now, and it's gone so far that a lot of this we cannot come back together. We cannot reconcile reality with delusions anymore. These people are always going to think that Donald Trump is a fascist, authoritarian, a dictator, for goodness sakes. There's nothing we can really do. I mean, we could try, but ain't much we can do about it. Let's keep going.
All right, Stephen Kluber, I mean, do you accept that there are circumstances where you do need to deploy National Guard and, if need be, Marines and the way that's been done, even if you don't think it was appropriate here?
As long as you handle it properly and effectively, to start with command and control and unify with the state of California and the local community, whether it's city or county. And if they don't want to cooperate, then bring them in, but give them an opportunity to cooperate. I don't believe for a moment they picked up the phone and spoke to the governor. I don't believe that. And you all can think what you think, but I know that's not true. This is Vendetta City here. Instead of unifying and working together, let's work together. It's not California versus Donald Trump. And Donald Trump loves to stoke the flame. California this, California that, like there's a spigot for our water. There's no spigot in California. Come on. Look, tell him to be a big boy, put his big boy pants on, and pick up the phone and work with California. Don't fight against us. Unify with us, would you please? We're the fourth largest GDP in the United States. You want to play this game, Donald? Why don't we cut off your federal funds? That's $94 billion. We'll see how you like to play that game. You'll be on an airplane in a heartbeat to California. We'll see you in LA, Sacramento, or San Francisco. We'll start talking turkey with our money. Okay?
This guy's just living in la la land. What in the hell are you talking about? Cut off the federal funding? Were you talking about stop paying taxes or something like that? Like, what are you talking about, California funding the federal government? That doesn't make any sense to me, because we know that the federal government subsidizes California to the tune of billions of dollars. I know that much. I'm not sure. I haven't really researched that, but sounds like delusional nonsense to me. And he gets on talking about, work with California. Well, what if California is living in a delusional dream world and thinks all of these things are true that aren't true, that are just absolutely false? You're living in a delusional dream world and you think there's no spigot. There is a spigot. All of the left-wing delusional nonsense, there's a lot of it in California, and most of it comes from there. These people don't understand reality. They don't live in reality. They don't want to enforce the laws that are on the books. They are a sanctuary state for these criminal aliens. And if that's what we're talking about here, let's talk about that. Not working with ICE agents, for goodness sakes, federal authorities, to get rid of criminal aliens, especially just the criminals. Right? Look, I understand the arguments. Oh, well, these people that are in the country illegally, but they're just working a job. They're picking crops and blah, blah, blah. Look, I get we can have a discussion over that, right? I still think that they should have tried to come in through the proper channels, for crying out loud. But you guys, you conflate immigrants with criminal aliens. And we're talking about deporting criminal aliens, and then you go and tell your constituents, oh, Donald Trump is wanting to remove migrants from this country. Well, no, there's a vast difference between migrants, criminal aliens, illegal immigrants, blah, blah, blah. There's a difference between all of those things. Migrants came in through the proper channels legally, and they're in the country legally, whether that's a citizen or, they're here on a visa, whatever that may be. they migrated to this country through the proper channels. Illegal immigrants, those are people who came into the country on like a work visa or a green card or something like that and overstayed that visa, and now they're in the country illegally. Those people, I don't think we have to worry about those people too much. A lot of those people are the people that are working the crops or picking grapes and blah, 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 cleaning hotel rooms, bathrooms, restaurants, servers, all of that stuff. Those people come secondary. It's the criminal aliens that we need to remove from this country. And you are conflating all of those to push an agenda because you want to stand up to the authoritarian fascist regime that is the Trump administration. Right? None of these people said a word when Joe Biden was deporting criminal aliens. Why? Why? Because Joe Biden was allowing 10 times more people to come into the country than he was kicking out. And a lot of those deportations that were on the books were taking people to the border, those expedited removal orders or whatever, the people that were here for less than 2 years, we take those people back to the border and release them. And that's it. And then they would kind of meander around on the other side of the border and then just cross right back into the country as soon as Border Patrol went on about their merry way. That's what they do. That's nonsense, folks. But nobody said anything about Joe Biden deporting all these criminal aliens. There were no nationwide injunctions stopping Obama from deporting criminal aliens. Where were all these liberals at when Obama was deporting more criminal aliens than any other president in American history? Where were y'all at? Where were these activist judges trying to stop Obama from deporting people? They weren't anywhere to be found, folks, which is nonsense. This is all hypocrisy coming from the left. They don't believe in any of the nonsense that they're spouting, right? We all know that criminals that came into the country illegally and committed crimes need to be deported expeditiously. They know that. They know that the American people don't want these people here. It's overwhelming, for goodness sakes. They just want to stand up to the authoritarian regime. That's all they want to do. They're make-believing their way into the civil rights activist cause of their day. They all want to be their own Martin Luther King Jr., for goodness sakes. They all want to be revered when history bears out that they stood up for the rights of undocumented migrants. That's all these people want. That is it, folks. And they're driving themselves further and further away from the base American in this country. Most Americans they're fed up with exactly what the Biden administration did over the last 4 years. They're fed up with all this delusional nonsense. They're fed up with all this protesting garbage that blocks traffic, stops these people from going to work, interrupts their daily lives. It's garbage. All of it's garbage. And these people will stand up for those people all freaking day long. And it's all delusional nonsense. It just blows my mind, y'all. It really does. And I can't wait to see the results from that gubernatorial race right there. I don't know who's going to win. California is deep blue, but I really hope that sheriff wins. I do. I'm just saying that. I'm not trying to promote the guy, but it would be a lot better for California if that sheriff wins instead of this guy, because this guy seems to be another Gavin Newsom just right off the jump. He's trying to play the game a little bit more moderately, where he's like, oh, if you watch that full-on debate right there, he's trying to play it more moderately. Yeah, these criminals need to be removed from the country, blah, blah, blah. But he refused to call them criminals. For one, he refused to call any of the people, even the criminals, he refused to call them criminals. He refused to say that all of them need to go, which the vast majority of Americans agree with. Right now, sure, once again, we could compromise on some of these farm workers and hotel workers, blah, blah, blah. Sure, we could talk about that. Maybe we can get to a compromise. But, this guy just seems to be another Gavin Newsom. He's just right there on deck, just waiting to come up. We just got a line of these people waiting for their chance. And, I really wish that sheriff would win. But I think I've rambled on for long enough on this one. I want y'all to let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comments section. It's mind-blowing, isn't it? How some of these people live their daily lives, and the things that they believe to be real are just fake for the most part. They're just ill-informed people that are just pushing for an agenda that doesn't line up with reality, and it doesn't make sense in the context of reality for the most part. But I love to point all these things out. But y'all let me know what y'all think about all of this down in the comment section. Y'all don't forget to do me that big favor and smash that like button for me. And subscribe, like I said, if you're new around here and you want to stay informed with what the corporate press is not telling you. Yeah, do that for sure. Share this video anywhere and everywhere you can, and if you could, I would greatly appreciate if you would look right below the video, click that join button, sign up, become a member, help me deliver the best possible content I can deliver to you guys, because we've got to get the message out there that people need to be informed. If you're going to make a decision on reality, on like the news, on what's actually going on in this country, you need to know all the information for the situation, if you will. So y'all do that for me, and y'all try to have a good day and stay legitical. Peace.